أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الكريم وعلى آله وأصحابه ما استنى بسنته يوم الدين أما بعد رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا واجتنابه اللهم إنا نسألك خير ما سألك عبدك رسولك نبيك محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم اللهم إنا نعوذ بك من شر ما استعاذ بك عبدك رسولك نبيك محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, my dear brothers and sisters in Islam. Welcome to our weekly Sunday Seerah program throughout this month of Rabiul Awwal. We have been talking every Sunday at this time about the various aspects of the life of our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and we have been mentioning many different aspects of his seerah. And today we are going to be talking about a Sunnah of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which has become forgotten over the many years, but now it is coming back soon, alhamdulillah. About almost about 15 years ago, this Sunnah has started to revive again. But 15 years ago, people did not know at all about this. The world did not really recognize it much, but it was a part of the Sunnah of Rasulullah, and then the Sahaba, and then the Tabi'een, and the Tabi' Tabi'een, and all those generations. And therefore, we'll be talking about Hijama. Hijama, as we know, is wet cupping. It is putting off a cut marks small on the body and putting a suction cup on it to suck the blood out of the skin. As you know, our body has many toxic materials, and our body accumulates toxicity within the bloodstream, and therefore, upon the upon the surface of the blood. Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi, Brother Zamir. Welcome. Thank you for joining. So, the aspect here is that the body accumulates all this toxicity, and it is on the surface of the skin. So when we put small, very, very light, small cut marks on the skin, just like as if probably a very light touch, sometimes, it's so light that sometimes we get a cut from paper, like very sharp paper edges and your fingers. So, that very light cut, that's the light cut that we put in this therapy called hijama therapy. And the Chinese have been practicing this also as an Asian medicine many times. They do as dry cupping, meaning they just cup on the body and it basically accumulates under the skin, but they don't do wet cupping. Hijama itself is a Sunnah of Rasulullah. Back then in Medina, Rasulullah used to have it done upon himself. Let us look at the slides, inshallah, and we'll talk about more with that. So, the first thing that we want to learn is this authentic or not? So if you see my screen right now, you will see the hadith of Rasulullah sallam about that it is inauthentic. It is mentioned in Sahih Bukhari, hadith number 5680, where narrated Ibn Abbas, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, healing is in three things. The Arabic is ash-shifa'u fi thalathat. Three things have healing in them. One, the first one is sharbatul asal, a gulp of honey or drinking of honey. When we drink honey in our body and as a part of regular diet, it helps in the body to heal many of the aspects. The second thing he said is cupping. So he said, "Ash-shifa fi thalatha." Shifa or cure is in three things. Number one, shurbat al-asal, the drinking of honey. Number two, was shartati mahjam, the cutting of the person who's doing the hijama. Wa kayat al-qumma an layth an nar, which is what we call cauterization, which is fire branding, putting some hot kind of But then the Prophet ﷺ said, I forbid that, but I forbid for my followers to use cauterization or bending with fire. So in this hadith, what we want to focus on is Rasulullah is saying that the shartat mahjam or hijama is a kind of a cure. Now, many people are confused, or sometimes are confused when you tell them what is hijama. They say, well, what is really hijama? Can you show us some pictures, some idea? A lot of times people are unaware what really hijama is. So here you see on the screen what really hijama is. Basically, it is putting a cup on certain parts of the body. And these parts, as you can see in the chart over here, it is all defined from the Sunnah. Rasulullah used to tell the Sahaba to put a cut on him. And back then, they didn't have the technology that we have today. Back then, what they used to do is, back then they used to have a kind of what you call a cup, and they would burn a candle or some kind of flame and put it inside the cup and then put it on the body. So when you put it on the body, then what happens is the flame goes out because there is no oxygen, and so that then makes the suction. Basically, the better the suction is on the body, the better hijama it will happen. And so that is why the suction on the body is really part of the main, you can say, ingredient of this whole process. Because that cup, that suction cup that puts on the body, that then begins to gather all the toxic blood, the filthy blood around in one area. So it's a kind of condensation process. Well, not really condensation, but condensing all the blood into one area around that cup. So the cup is put over there. Now today, in this world and age, we have this suction pump, and then what they do is they use the suction pump to put it on the body, and then they create the vacuum on the cup for the suction, and by creation of that vacuum, it holds up on the body. And then after a few minutes, you release the suction cup, and then you put on the cuts. And that is why you would take a blade, of course, sterilize and everything, and put it on the body, in around that cup, the circumference of the cup, within the circle of that cup, you would put the small cuts. If you can see here, the bottom left picture that you see on my screen, this is after the hijama. This is what your body looks like. Small red spots. Nothing to worry about, nothing to be scared. It's not like your body is bleeding or something profusely. It's just very minor little cuts. And the reason you see all these red spots is because those are the spots from where the blood emanated. Because after putting the cuts, then you put the cup back on that spot, you create the vacuum through suction, and then the blood starts flowing. So it's a two-step process. Step one is here, the top left picture. Step one is where you just put the cups on the body, make the vacuum through suction, and leave it there for a while, so that the blood accumulates underneath the skin of the person. And then once the time is passed, then you release the suction cup, and then you put the cuts over there. You see the middle picture. And then after the cuts, you put the cup again, and you create the suction and the vacuum again. So this way it will begin to, the blood begins flowing. Then when the blood begins flowing and enough is accumulated, you then release the suction cup again, and then the blood is cleansed from there, and the blood is disposed of in a hygienic, sterile fashion. And that's all it is, because that's the whole step. Step one is putting a dry cup. Step two is putting the cuts on the circumference, the circle place of that area. And then step three is putting the cup back on and suction, creating vacuum in it. And then step four is to just remove the cups and cleanse the area. And that is all part of the process of hijama. And there are special positions, they are known as the sunnah spots, where they are conducted, so that those spots are known for shifa for many, many different kinds of diseases and sicknesses, whether it's all kinds of aspects of the sicknesses. So therefore, once that is done, then the body begins to self-heal over the time, because as the old blood has been taken out from these spots, underneath in that area, new blood begins to formulate, new red blood cells or white blood cells that begin to form, and they boost your immunity. They increase your immunity in the body. And that increased immunity in the body is then what fights off the many different things, especially for pain management. A lot of times people have, joint problems, arthritis, disc problems, herniated disc. So pain is a lot in the body. And so therefore through hijama, a lot of this pain management is easily done and pain goes away, because basically the addition of new blood cells in the body then fight off many of the sicknesses and pains and all of that. We move on to the next slide. We want to mention the hadith of Rasulullah, where he said that, narrated by Abu Hurairah anhu, the Prophet said, "There is no disease that Allah has created except that He also has created its treatment." In other words, Rasulullah is encouraging people to find many ways of treatment, not just one way of treatment, and not fixed to one thing. Try as many things. And that is why he said, "Ma anzal Allah dan illa anzala lahu shifa." Allah has not created a disease that for which there is no shifa. There is a shifa. In other words, this hadith is saying that we should be progressive, productive, keep researching and finding new ways of treatment for many things. And of course, use the sunnah way, which is the hijama that we are using. So shifa is, of course, what this hadith is saying, that shifa is in the hands of who? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah is the one who only provides the shifa, and no one else can provide shifa. And the means, asbab, are taken by people. So let's move on about the hijama, as you see over there on the next slide. Uh, Narrated Jabir ibn Abdullah that he paid Al-Muqanna a visit during his illness and said, "I will not leave till he gets cupped, for I heard Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam saying, there is healing in cupping. So inna fihi shifa." So this is the previous hadith is talking about how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created shifa in everything. And this hadith is talking about there is healing in the aspect of hijama, in the aspect of cupping, there is healing in that. Meaning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has kept a healing in this process of hijama. Because a lot of times people say there is no medicine you're taking, no antibiotics, there is no injection, it is just cuts on the body, and how can that solve our way? And that is why when we talk about hijama, it's not really injecting something into the body, but rather it is ejecting from the body the filthy bad blood, the dead cells that are there and that are accumulating and piling up. And so that's why then the new cells that are formed, they begin to strengthen and boost the immunity of the body and bring more difference into it. Now, a lot of times people ask, who's going to do hijama? Like, is it volunteer basis? Who's going to do it on my body? Or, I mean, because sometimes you can do it for yourself if it's not on the back of the body. There are certain spots in the front, on the legs, on the hands that you can do. But obviously, if you want to do it on your back, you can't do it yourself. So you would have to have someone, a hijama therapist or someone else, to come on to do the hijama on the body. So is it okay to pay somebody to do the hijama? That's a question. And for that, we see this hadith that narrated Ibn Abbas radhiyallahu anhu. The Prophet ﷺ was cupped, and he paid the wages to one who had cupped him, and then he took sood, which is a medicine sniffed by the nose. So this hadith is clearly telling us that it is okay to pay somebody, just like we go to a doctor and pay them their fees for the visit of the doctor's visit. So it is fine if somebody can not afford to give free service for hijama, Then if they are requesting because they have cost involved, there's of course there's a lot of cost involved, as you know. In this slide I showed you the picture, all of these cups and the pump and all of these things, and then disposing of the stuff. These things, they cost. And so if a person is charging for that and not doing it for free, that is perfectly fine. We can pay them for those services, as per the hadith of Rasulullah, that he also paid somebody for that. In another hadith that you see right now on the screen, Rasulullah informed us that the person narrated, Anas radiallahu anhu, that he was asked about the wages of the one who cups others. He said, Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam was cupped by Abd Taiba, to whom he gave 2 sa'a of food. Sa'a is like a handful, so 2 handful of food. This is back then in the old days in Medina. So instead of currency or money or gold, dinar or dirham, he gave him food, which is also a way of means of paying somebody. And he also interceded for him with his masters, who consequently reduced what they used to charge him daily, meaning if that person was there bonded with someone. And then the Prophet ﷺ also said, the best medicines you may treat yourself with are cupping and seen says. So he said, this is one of the ways of the best medicine to remove from the body toxicity and bring out the filthiness from the body, so that new special things can come. And then the issue comes up, when can you do cupping? Of course, there are many hadiths. You can do it at nighttime. Also, you can do it at daytime. It's preferred to be at daytime. There are special nights, special days in the month that Rasulullah used to do, especially the 17, 19, and 21st of every month, that he would do because of the moon cycle and the moon rotation. It helps in this blood flow and the circulatory of the body system. It has some connection, and it's better to fast before doing the hijama itself. Here in the hadith, you see that narrated Ibn Abbas that the Prophet ﷺ was cupped while he was fasting, so it is okay. It is okay for the blood to come out while you're fasting. Although the other aspect is that if you do hijama while fasting, you might feel dizzy and nausea and weak, because hijama does make a person initially, right after the hijama, you do feel a weakness in the body, because depending on the amount of blood that came out in the cups. For example, if we go back to that slide where we have the pictures, you will see that it all depends how many cups you put on your body. If it's just 1 or 2 cups, that wouldn't make a big difference. But if you're putting a lot of cups while you're fasting and you do all that hijama, obviously that's going to drain your energy, and you're already on an empty stomach. So therefore, it is okay to do hijama while fasting, but it's only recommended if the person can bear the consequences of the hijama afterwards. The other hadith we see over here that Rasulullah said is narrated by Ibn Abbas that Rasulullah was cupped while he was in a state of ihram. So even in a state of ihram, Rasulullah did do the hijama upon his body. Now, there are many different spots of doing hijama. As you see that picture I showed earlier, these are special spots in the body. Let me see if I can raise this up. Expand the thing. All right, so here we go. So there are many aspects of many positions of hijama. This is number 1 that you see on the screen. The number 1 spot over here is known as the Sunnah spot of hijama. Then there's some more over here. There are some on the shoulder blades over here. There's some in the middle, and then of course on the back side, especially for back pain, herniated disc, and other things. It's over there. It's on the back side of the body. By doing hijama, it helps organ function, especially like lungs and kidneys and liver and whatnot. So all of these are connected. Our human body that Allah has made for us in a beautiful way, has all interconnectivity. And so hijama, by extracting that filthy, dirty blood out of the body, hijama strengthens with new blood cells being formed into the body, and then they go into the blood flow. And of course, in the blood flow, they enrich all these organs, and that's why these organs start optimization of their functioning. And so that helps a lot in terms of its benefit that the person can do in a healthy way, in a healthy body. So that is why hijama is a sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It is something that he used to do upon himself, and he also encouraged the Sahaba to do it, and they also did it. It continued for many years, hundreds of years, until it gradually started dying out, and people, stopped doing it. So it became like a lost sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But now, over the last 15, 20 years, it has started back again, and it's increasing. And now it's become very common. You can easily search hijama online on Google, and you'll probably find some hijama therapists. It needs proper training. You need to be trained properly, and also you need to be, known carefully of how to do the process. And there are many professional organizations that are teaching of people on how to do hijama. And once you learn it, then it's a very good thing, because A, it's a sunnah, and B, you're getting ajr from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by doing this and helping people heal their body, heal themselves. Of course, there are some people who cannot do hijama on their body, especially if they're diabetic, or if they have any kind of sicknesses or diseases that may aggravate healing of the cuts, or other diseases that may become aggravated because of blood flow. So all these things are important to understand. So with that, we end inshallah today's program, and we make dua inshallah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the tawfiq to understand, to help us learn the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and that we can spread this message to others, and others can also inshallah learn from this and be able to practice more this sunnah, and spread the sunnah, spread the word around, so that more people can have hijama done on their body and heal their body. And doing this with the intention, niyyah, that it's a sunnah of Rasulullah will give us more ajr, more sawab, inshallah, and a healthy and body, inshallah. اللهم انت السلام منك السلام تباركت ربنا وتعالى يا ذا الجلال الكرام. اللهم تقبل منا انك انت السميع العليم، وتب علينا مولانا انك انت التواب الرحيم. وصلى الله في خلق محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى اله وصحبه برحمتك الرحمين. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد ان لا اله الا الله، نستغفرك ونتوب اليك.